On Christmas Day, 2024, Britt Allcroft passed away. She was the creator of the television adaptation of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. And YouTube is full of beautiful tributes to her. Music videos, retrospectives on her life and her career, people explaining how Thomas impacted them as children and in some cases shaped their adult lives as well. And I got to thinking, how could I pay tribute to Britt Allcroft on my channel? I don't have the editing skills or the finesse necessary to make some beautiful video essay or anything like that. What could I do? Because as a boy, 30 years ago, collecting Thomas tapes was my thing, and that opened the door to collecting physical media, which, if you watch my channel, you know I'm absolutely in love with it. From records to VHS tapes, everything else. All of that I can trace back to collecting Thomas videos. And I thought, you know what? For my salute to Britt Allcroft, a recognition of all her work and the impact she had on untold children around the world, I thought, why don't we talk about some unusual Thomas and Friends videos? Now, we've talked about Thomas's sister series, Shining Time Station, before. I have a review of every episodic Shining Time video on this channel. You can check those videos out sometime if you haven't already. And you could go a lot of directions with Thomas tapes too, because there are some that are rare because they were released near the end of VHS as a major, sort of home format for watching things before it was permanently supplanted by DVD. I don't have a Tales from the Tracks VHS tape, sadly. I wish I did, but I don't. But there are lots of rare ones there. And there are all kinds of rare promotional videos, or there's a TV Teddy tie-in for Thomas as well. I don't have that. I do have the Shining Time tie-in. But I got to thinking, you know what? I think Britt would like it if I was just simple and direct. So today we'll look at the Thomas tapes that didn't make the transition to DVD. And this is my personal thank you for Britt Allcroft for all she's done for me and for, at that time, children all around the world. So thank you, Britt. Thomas and Friends came to the U.S. home media market in the very early 1990s. The first 5 videos were all narrated by Ringo Starr. So we had Thomas Gets Tricked, James Learns a Lesson, Tenders and Turntables, Thomas Breaks the Rules, and Volume 5 being Better Late Than Never. George Carlin would take over narrating for Volume 6 and onwards, at least for the most part. We would see strictly his dubs. The first 2 videos, both were later released to DVD. They were both re-released on VHS at various points. Here's a later copy of James Learns a Lesson for you. And proved, I think, to be pretty popular overall amongst fans. And especially, I think, for people younger than I, these 2 were probably the only Ringo ones they had in their collection. And of course, I'm old enough to have had all 5 of them, and Ringo was my first Thomas narrator, at least for the most part. But it was certainly a way for him to take his Mr. Conductor persona and further that by narrating these 5 videos. Of course, the only Shining Time with Ringo as Mr. Conductor that was widely released to home media was the Christmas special. Here's my VHS copy of it. It was also reissued several times. Now, of course, on these videos, Ringo narrates it with the U.S. terminology. For example, freight cars replaces trucks, things like that. And sometimes lines of dialogue are changed or added for the U.S. dubs, that kind of thing. And there are people who are far more versed in this field than I who could go through and point out all the different scripting changes and narration differences, and sometimes there's even differences within releases of US dubs, that kind of thing. But for the most part, these 2 tapes, pretty common material, you can find them elsewhere. Of course, there was an attempt to redo the Thomas Gets Tricked video with George Carlin narrating, and there are very rare copies that feature his versions of the episodes, but for the most part, this is a Ringo tape, and this is a Ringo tape. And you can get these on DVD or elsewhere. So let's look at Volume 3, because Volume 3 never made it to DVD or beyond. Tenders and Turntables, or should I say Tenders and Turntable, as for some reason they forgot the S on the front of the box. Not the only typo either. Those of you who watch the Unlucky Tugs videos will already know that Toby the Tram Engine is given the incorrect moniker of Toby the Train Engine on the back of the box. So figure that one out. Alright, so Tenders and Turntables did not make the transition from VHS to DVD. Most of the episodes, or actually all of the episodes, were released elsewhere, most of them popping up on A Big Day for Thomas. But as this video came much later, as you can see up there in the corner, George Carlin was the narrator instead. And the few that weren't on that video, such as Thomas Comes to Breakfast and Tenders and Turntables, those were all released on other compilation videos around that time. But again, all with George Carlin's dubs. I know that Ringo's US dubs for at least a couple of these episodes have been used in some of the bigger DVD collections, but for the most part, these particular ones lived and died on VHS. Again, some Thomas scholar could go through and point out which DVD releases have Ringo's US dubs and which of his UK dubs and stuff, but the point is there is no direct DVD or Blu-ray or digital or anything else companion to Tenders and Turntables. Or should we just call it Tenders and Turntable? I don't know. Anyway, this is an unusual video. Now, those of you who know Season 1 pretty well will know it's very structured. Every character has a multi-episode story arc, and so order is very important. Indeed, the first two videos have the stories in the same order as the UK got them, basically the same order as they were published in the original books in the 40s and 50s. Tenders and Turntables starts to break that trend. The first few episodes are indeed in order, and are indeed related, but all of a sudden we get Thomas Comes to Breakfast, which was from Season 2. The only Season 2 episode on here is where we get our cover image as well. They skipped the Season 1 episode that would have been in that particular slot, Whistles and Sneezes, and that would not be released until Volume 9, 6 videos later. And by this point they were putting out Season 3 episodes too. So this video, Daisy, the DVD was retitled Percy Takes the Plunge, but this particular video has episodes from Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3 all on there in really no discernible order. Very, very bizarre. But we see that here already with just the third home media release. They're already putting episodes out of order. And that's a big deal in the early Thomas seasons because then, again, with these kind of multi-episode stories, order and continuity kind of matter. So for some reason, in the middle of this tape, we have a story that features Donald and Douglas and Toby and other characters that we haven't even been introduced yet, if you're just watching your way through the videos in order. I don't know. I think this was done to give Thomas a showcase episode on this tape because he's not a major player in any of the other ones, so they no doubt wanted a Thomas episode. But my question is, why couldn't they have just taken Thomas Breaks the Rules, also known as Thomas in Trouble if you're in the UK, and just put that on this video? I don't know. But apparently they wanted Thomas Comes to Breakfast. They must have wanted to use that image that graces the front of the box, that kind of thing. So it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, but the rest of the tape is very cohesive, so I don't know. I also know, of course, that the order they were broadcast on Shining Time Station, you can see the Shining Time sun up there in the corner, has at least some bearing on how the episodes were released to home media, but again, I don't know that it would affect the continuity quite this much. It's very unusual. So maybe it was that kind of irregular story balancing that they stopped and said, we probably don't need to release this on DVD. It's only going to throw new fans off. I mean, when I was a little boy getting this tape, I had enough of the storybooks and tie-in things that I kind of knew the general continuity already, but I could see a kid who was just getting into Thomas back in the 90s watching this and being like, who are all these characters we haven't met yet? So, I don't know. It is a good tape, though. We have some definite classics on there. The Flying Kipper, of course, we'll talk about later on in this video as well. Pretty solid release, and Ringo does a great job on all of his US narrations as well. I should add that. So, a mixture of Season 1 and Season 2, but mostly Season 1. But let's talk about Volume 4, Thomas Breaks the Rules, because that also mixes episodes from Season 1 and Season 2, but this time it's kind of flip-flopped. The bulk of them are from Season 2, so we're already putting out episodes when we haven't even finished all the episodes from the previous year yet, or in this case 2 years. I don't know, very, very bizarre. So, get a good selection of stories though. Thomas Breaks the Rules, also known as Thomas in Trouble, and James in a Mess, also known as Dirty Objects, are the only Season 1 episodes. The rest are all fun ones from Season 2. Again, Ringo narrates with the US terminology. Most of these episodes were reused on the... Is this the one? Yes, it is. On the Thomas and His Friends Get Along video, but again, that was with George Carlin. So if you wanted Ringo's US dubs, you generally have to seek out the original VHS copy. And of course, those other collections fill in some of the gaps, should you just want to get the episodes with any dub. But it is a fun tape, and a pretty solid tape as well. There's no real look at continuity or anything like that. You can see the episodes are all just kind of jumbled together. Season 1, Season 2, in no discernible order. And that carries on a bit to volume number 5, here in purple, Better Late Than Never and Other Stories. Again, mostly Season 2 releases, with a couple Season 1s they hadn't put out yet thrown in. Thankfully, these are Season 1 episodes that were near the end. Things like Off the Rails, here called Gordon Takes a Dip, and also Down the Mine, which of course famously was the episode used for the pilot and then reshot. Ideally, we'll get that pilot very soon in some form. That's what everybody's hoping for. But this one has Duck on the cover. There is an alternate one with Thomas on the cover, but I've never owned that. I've always had the one with Duck on the cover. And I like that they keep the Season 2 episodes that are related kind of together. You can see the whole Duck trilogy there at the beginning, that kind of stuff. And thankfully, he was introduced on the last video, so there'd be no confusion going from 4 to 5 about who certain characters were. Probably know them all pretty well. It's a fun video though. And then Volume 6, Trust Thomas, would pick up with Season 3 episodes. Trust Thomas and the videos that followed that were indeed later re-released to DVD, but for some reason these 3, maybe due to their kind of haphazard structure of different episodes from different seasons, but these 3 remained strictly on VHS. There are all kinds of fun Thomas Christmas releases out there. DVDs and videos with all sorts of episodes that have to do with Christmas, or at least with winter, and a lot of them are very, very fun. And they could all be traced back to 1994's Thomas's Christmas Party and Other Favorite Stories. The first time that a Thomas video reused stories from previous releases to make something of a compilation, and this would become a far more common practice later. We talked about some of those reissues when we reviewed volumes 3 through 5, and there are releases like 10 Years of Thomas and Best of various characters that reuse episodes from other releases to showcase a particular aspect of the show or a particular character. In this case, Thomas's Christmas Party does this to showcase kind of heartwarming, mellow episodes that the whole family could enjoy, that sort of thing, at least generally. Sometimes it's just to showcase winter episodes. You know, some of my usual watchers who come here for Beach Boys reviews are going to wonder why they're sitting here watching this, so let's make a Beach Boys comparison, shall we? Thomas's Christmas Party is the Still Cruisin' of Thomas tapes. Still Cruisin' was designed to showcase songs that had been used in recent films by the Beach Boys. The problem is it doesn't quite follow this practice entirely. We have new songs that were used in recent films, old songs that were used in recent films, and new songs that did not appear in films. So we're left with kind of a weird hybrid mixture that sort of commits to its premise, but not really. It's kind of all over the place. And Thomas's Christmas Party fits very neatly into that category as well. We have 2 actual Christmas episodes, the 2 sort of OG Thomas Christmas releases, Thomas's Christmas Party, the Season 1 finale, and Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree, the Season 2 finale. And then we get into winter episodes. This is early enough in the show that there really weren't enough Christmas episodes to fill out a video. And winter episodes, it would have been kind of a tight squeeze. You know, it might have been possible. Interestingly, they did not use what at the time was the very recent Thomas and Percy's Christmas or mountain adventure, depending on what release you look at. But as that was promoted as a Thanksgiving episode in the US, I can kind of see why they might have skipped it. But still, it would fit pretty neatly on a collection like this. I don't know. But anyway, we get to winter episodes with things like Terrence the Tractor, the Flying Kipper, and A Scarf for Percy, all of which fit the theme as snow factors into all of them, or at least the cold anyway. And then we get 3 kind of random episodes from different parts of the show. Henry's Forest, A New Friend for Thomas, and Thomas Saves the Day all round out the video. These ones, of course, take place in the spring or summer, and don't quite meet the Christmas aspect of the video. So it kind of starts Christmassy, and as it goes becomes less Christmassy, I guess is the way to look at it. It's a very odd release. Again, I think it was just the pool of episodes they had to pick from. There wasn't quite enough to go around to make a cohesive Christmas release, so they had to do, a little bit of creative kind of working with different episodes and different ideas to make it fit. I'm kind of surprised they didn't use the Deputation. That to me would have been an easy choice for this. It's snowy and cold and also very heartwarming, so I think it would fit on here very neatly, but apparently that wasn't what they wanted to do. I can see why they might not have wanted to look at very recent episodes as well, because as far as I know, Percy's Ghostly Trick and Thomas's Christmas Party were released at least around the same time. So this one did get a VHS reissue. Here's the updated cover. You can see it takes off the little banner promising you a special gift if you mailed it in. I know I mailed this in. I do not remember what I got. I remember getting an Erdl Oliver toy in the mail. That must have been what it was. I don't know. If someone knows what you got, if you mailed in the postcard, please comment it below. But here we get kind of a different design. We get that extra shiny cover. See George Carlin's name. It's bigger. Here's the back of the reissue. Thomas's Christmas Party is an interesting tape, and I mean the episodes are all good, even though they're not all really sticking to sort of a Christmas release kind of theme. But I will say, today it's been supplanted and overtaken by later releases. Even the next Christmas video, which came out about, 6-7 years later, Thomas's Christmas Wonderland, is a much better release. It has a lot more in terms of cohesion. All the episodes are snowy and cold. Yeah, we do get the weird kind of botched dub of Thomas and Percy's, I guess I should call it Christmas Mountain Adventure, because the release can't seem to make up its mind which one it is. But this one is, far better, but, they had more to work with at this point, that kind of thing. Plus, we get a song on this one, too, with the snow song. As it stands, Thomas's Christmas Party and Other Favorite Stories, an interesting look at kind of the first attempt to make a seasonal release, but I just think the resources weren't there just yet. They maybe would have been wise to hold off another year or two. But it's still a fun release, and we still get some great George Carlin narration and several classic stories. George Carlin took over as the de facto narrator for Thomas Home Media with Volume 6, Trust Thomas, and indeed he released narrations for all of Season 3 and all of Season 4 to VHS, not to mention the various compilations where he went back and re-recorded Ringo's narrations, and those were released on various compilation tapes as well. But I kind of want to talk about one oddball that stands with all of Carlin's narrations. Now, of course, Season 4 is much loved by fans. Indeed, here's Rusty to the Rescue. It's the first Season 4 video released in the US. Of course, George Carlin did the whole season. The United States would not get Michael Angelis narrations for many years yet. He was, of course, narrating them in England at the time, as Carlin was doing them in America. But Carlin's last sort of true blue Thomas tape of new material, which was called Thomas Meets the Queen, was only ever released to VHS. It never made the transition from VHS to DVD. I've never been able to find or even conjecture some sort of reason why this was. Some of those earlier releases, like Thomas's Christmas Party, I kind of get that. It's a little bit too much of a mishmash to really warrant a DVD release, but this one has a lot of really good episodes and is a very fun and original video, so why wouldn't you release it to DVD? The eponymous story, Thomas Meets the Queen, and also the story Special Funnel both got DVD releases as part of other compilations, but the rest of these stories all basically lived and died on VHS. Nowadays, of course, I'm sure you can stream them digitally, but it's odd that this didn't get a DVD release. Rusty to the Rescue and its peers like Gallant Old Engine and Thomas and a Special Letter all got multiple VHS releases, plus of course DVD ones later. This video, for some reason, did not. So some fun stories here. Mind That Bike, of course, Christopher Audrey adaptation. We have Train Stops Play, that's a very fun story. Bullseyes, pretty cool. And Four Little Engines, the story that kind of tries to set up the narrow gauge railway, was actually the last one from Season 4 released on US home media, so figure that out. Putting something that should have been near the beginning at the very, very end. Kind of strange, but of course, as we've seen before, US home media releases, especially VHS tapes, like to kind of combine different things. Even though that was George Carlin's last sort of official role as narrator, many other compilations would use his narrations, even into the hit era, where there are DVDs that split George Carlin with Alec Baldwin, or sometimes even throw Michael Brandon in there too. But Carlin was such a great narrator, and like Ringo, was the voice of my childhood, and of course George Carlin always spoke very positively on his work with Thomas, and very positively of Britt Allcroft, to whom I dedicate this video today. I'm sure all of us watching, myself included, would all say, thank you, Britt, for all you've done, and you know, what would our lives be like if our childhoods weren't shaped by the wonderful world created in Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. So go find a VCR and a few of your favorite Thomas tapes and take a chill day to re-watch some of those classic moments. And I'll see you next time. So long.